Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I'm honestly so thrilled to get into this one with you. Today, we are building a literal blueprint for an inspiring documentary. We're going to dive right into how cinematic techniques can actually reveal the sheer, breathtaking courage and the fascinating neuroscience behind ordinary people stepping up to perform extraordinary acts of justice every single day. We're looking at how filmmakers use things like striking visuals, emotional narration, uplifting scores, and just incredibly grounded storytelling to capture the true essence of human bravery. To do that, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the hybrid storytelling approach, move into the neuroscience of altruism, highlight some unsung heroes and whistleblowers, check out visual metaphors and editing, and finally wrap up with sound design and emotion. We're going to navigate this whole journey by layering the technical art of filmmaking right over the deeply human psychology of whistleblowers, extreme altruists, and civil rights heroes. So let's get right to it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the hybrid storytelling approach. To build our story, we first have to choose our lens. And really, the single biggest storytelling decision you make, long before you even pick up a camera, is whether you're going to follow a person or follow an idea.
It's the ultimate crossroads, right? Do we create deep emotional bonds through someone's personal stakes, or do we try to spark intellectual curiosity with a structured, thesis-driven argument? A character-driven approach hooks us immediately into a real person's emotional journey. We ride along for that classic three-act narrative arc. We feel their highs, we feel their lows, and their ultimate transformations. Now, on the flip side, a topic-driven approach educates us on a broader systemic issue. That one leans heavily on hard evidence, credentialed experts, and a really rigorous analytical structure to break down complex world events. But here is the crucial point for our blueprint. We're choosing the hybrid approach. Why? Well, because anchoring highly abstract concepts like global anti-corruption efforts or even complex brain anatomy to real, breathing human experiences, that's what creates the most captivating explainer possible. You pull the audience in emotionally with a character they can actually root for, while also providing a broader topic that gives the whole thing deep intellectual weight. It's totally the gold standard for crafting a documentary that doesn't just inform you, but literally inspires you. Moving right along to Section 2, the neuroscience of altruism. Okay, let's explore the fascinating biological topic that actually drives a character's heroic actions. Like, where does this overwhelming drive to help others, even at massive personal risk, actually come from? What's truly fascinating here is how Georgetown psychology and neuroscience professor Dr. Abigail Marsh connects our ancient evolutionary biology directly to extreme acts of compassion toward total strangers. Get this, the exact same wiring that makes mammals inherently care for their vulnerable offspring is the biological foundation that allows a human to risk absolutely everything for someone they've never even met. It's kind of a profound realization, isn't it? Bravery and justice aren't just these abstract moral concepts. They're literally hardwired into our mammalian DNA. And that brings us to a tiny but extraordinarily mighty part of the human brain, the amygdala. Through Dr. Marsh's research, we learn that highly altruistic people, like, say, someone who willingly donates a kidney to a complete stranger, actually possess an amygdala that's far more sensitive to recognizing another person's need. When these folks see fear or distress in someone's face, their amygdala just goes into absolute overdrive. It signals the hypothalamus to drop this massive, immediate burst of adrenaline and cortisol. It literally, physically, and chemically prepares them to step up and help in a split-second life-or-death situation. So let's look at how this biological reaction unfolds in the real world. We're tracking the terrifying adrenaline-fueled minutes of an ordinary guy who risked his own life in the Canadian Rockies. At minute 0, a sudden, violent storm blows in. By minute 5, he hears frantic yelling for help out in the freezing water. Fueled entirely by that intense amygdala response we just talked about, he doesn't even hesitate. By minute 10, he's swimming arm over arm through ice-cold water, keeping his face up because honestly, it's just physically too cold to submerge. At minute 15, he reaches a couple who are literally blue in the face in deep physiological shock. Finally, at the 20-minute mark, he wraps a canoe rope around his own wrist and just powerfully sidestrokes them all back to the safety of the shore. I mean, wow. That is the biology of altruism in spectacular cinematic action. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3. Unsung heroes and whistleblowers. From those split-second water rescues to calculated long-term stands against corruption, ordinary individuals really are the ultimate protagonists of our justice documentary.
When we scale global justice side by side like this, it proves that whether you're a civil rights foot soldier from the 50s and 60s or a modern-day whistleblower, your everyday courage fundamentally shapes the society we all live in. Just think about these examples. You've got everyday citizens in Lebanon who took it upon themselves to expose factories dumping toxic waste into the Litani River. That directly triggered aerial filming and massive environmental cleanups. Or take the medics in Zambia who anonymously reported unpaid World Bank COVID-19 funds. That sparked a full government audit that finally got frontline healthcare workers the pay they actually deserved. Or the LuxLeaks whistleblowers, who bravely exposed billions with a B in corporate tax evasion, and despite immense corporate pushback, were ultimately vindicated by the European Court of Human Rights. The scale of these impacts is just absolutely massive. But the common thread? Every single one of them started with one ordinary person making the extraordinary decision to act.
All right, moving to Section 4, visual metaphors in editing. Now, to properly convey the true magnitude of these incredible heroes on screen, a documentary editor kind of has to act like a choreographer, carefully weaving movement and subtext to make us truly feel the weight of their actions. I absolutely love this concept from documentary editor Jennifer Beeman because it forces us to ask what feeling our imagery is evoking, just below the audience's conscious awareness. Think about it. If you show a cow on screen, it's never just a cow. If that cow is framed tightly behind a heavy wooden fence, it implies constraint, limitation, being trapped. But if that exact same cow is shown running across a massive open field, suddenly it implies freedom and boundless opportunity. Every single shot chosen in a documentary carries a metaphorical weight that drives the emotional narrative forward. And when framing the victories of our whistleblowers, we use these exact visual metaphors to subconsciously amplify their emotional triumph. An editor is essentially painting in 4 dimensions here. Upward camera movements literally make you feel positive and uplifted. Downward framing subconsciously implies despair or defeat. So think back to our Zambian medics finally getting their hard-earned pay or that toxic Litani River finally beginning to run clean. We definitely wouldn't show a static enclosed room for that. We'd point the camera toward an open road or use upward, soaring aerial footage to let the audience physically feel that expansive sense of justice and freedom. The editor is building the story's true meaning, stroke by deliberate stroke. And finally, Section 5, sound design and emotion. Because visual metaphor is really only half of the cinematic equation, right? We also need to architect the auditory experience to match the immense weight of justice. The ear is just as important as the eye when it comes to realistic storytelling. By layering these 3 exact auditory steps, a skilled sound designer creates an electrifying realism that drops you, the viewer, right alongside the heroes fighting for what's right. First, we use Foley to ground the scene, recording the hyper-realistic sound of, say, a whistleblower's lonely footsteps echoing down a marble, empty hallway. Second, we build rich ambiances, like the chaotic, terrifying rush of that mountain storm we talked about, or the desolate, quiet hum of a polluted riverbank. And finally, we meticulously clean the dialogue. We strip away the background hiss so the hero's voice cuts through the noise, clear, intimate, and entirely unwavering. And when the documentary reveals a staggering, almost incomprehensible figure, like the $728 million that went missing from Lebanon's Litani River cleanup project, how do you even score a moment like that? A great composer wouldn't use a dense, distracting, bombastic Hollywood orchestra. No way. Instead, you score a shocking revelation like this with minimal, suspenseful counterpoint music. You might just use a single low cello note. You let the number itself and the heavy, lingering silence around it do the heavy lifting. You allow the natural sounds of the film to breathe, so the absolute gravity of the corruption can truly sink into the viewer's mind. Which brings us to our final, and I think most profound takeaway today. We've explored how filmmakers use character-driven storytelling, vivid visual metaphors, and meticulous sound design to highlight these incredible acts of justice. But the raw material for those cinematic stories? It's not something magical or unreachable. That hardwired biological capacity for true heroism is sitting right inside your amygdala right now, just waiting for the right moment to spark into action. So I'll leave you with this thought. If that moment came for you today, what action would you take, and how would the documentary of your courage unfold? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.